So in the last class we had started about the second chapter, that is the formation of a company, and in that we were studying about the promoter. Now we shall study what is a promoter and what is the legal status of a promoter. We have seen some basic details about the promoter and how he functions and what is the relation with him. So now legal status of a promoter. The legal status of a promoter is quite clear. A promoter is neither an agent nor a trustee of the company to be formed. He is not the agent because company has not yet come into existence, and he is not a trustee because there is no trust in existence. The promoter occupies a fiduciary trust and confidence relationship towards the company which is yet to be formed. So from this what we can understand that promoter is neither a trustee nor a agent of the company. He is not an agent of the company because the company has not yet come into existence, and he is not a trustee because there is no trust in existence. That is, he occupies a fiduciary relationship. Fiduciary means not a real one, a relation of trust and confidence which is just on a person with the company. So therefore, in other words, we can say that the principles of law of agency and of the trusteeship have been extended very properly to meet the ends of justice. This position requires him to make full disclosures of the relevant facts, including any profits made by him. So what does this mean? That he has a relationship wherein he meets the ends of justice, and the position requires him to make full disclosures of relevant facts, including any profits made by him. So if he makes any profits from the company, or if he is trying to make any profit, in that case, since the company has given some trust and confidence on him, he should disclose all the relevant facts, such as in the capacity of a fiduciary relationship with the proposed company, the promoter is expected to perform the following duties: to make full disclosures of all material facts relating to the formation of the company. So he has to make disclosure of all the material facts relating to the formation of the company. Whatever he is using, whatever are the important facts which shall be known by all the people who are there in the company, shall be disclosed by him. Then he should not make any secret profits. He shall not make any secret profits like selling his property to a company or demanding commission from the sellers of the company, that is etc., without the knowledge and consent of the company. Whatever he is doing shall be known by the company. If he does not do that, in that case he shall be punishable, or in that case the trust and confidence which the company has shown on that person shall be lost in the process. Now he has to disclose to the company any interest that he has in the transaction being made with the company. Any profit made by him in such disclosed transaction is not returnable. So any profit which he has made in case of selling his property, or commission he has received from sellers, in that case it shall not be returnable if he has not disclosed it. It is expected that such disclosures are to be made to the competent board of directors. If such board is not constituted, then it should be made to the whole body of initial shareholders. In short, he is expected to act as a guardian of the proposed company in an honest, careful and skillful manner. So in this case, he has to inform, or he has to disclose all the information which was required to the board of directors. And if board of directors are not yet present, in that case, whoever are the shareholders or whoever are the initial shareholders who are investing in the company are expected to know that whatever is happening in the company. In this way, he can win the confidence and trust of the company towards him, because he is one of the honest, careful and skillful employees of the company, which so he is expected to behave in a proper manner with the company. Now we shall study about liabilities of promoters. What are the liabilities of promoters? Firstly, liability of non-disclosure. If it is found that the promoter has failed to make any disclosures at the time of the contract was made, in such a case the company may exercise the following remedies. So if a person does not disclose the profits he has made, in that case what shall be his liability? It can rescind the contract and recover the purchase price where the promoter has sold his own property to the company. It can recover the secret profits made by a promoter in the transaction with the company. Company can hold him liable and to pay damages for breach of fiduciary duty. So in this case, firstly, they shall resign to the contract and recover the purchase price. Means what? Whatever was the amount without profit shall be only kept, and remaining amount shall be recovered from the promoter because whatever property he sold. Suppose he has sold the property for 10 lakh rupees and the market value was suppose 7 lakh rupees. So in that case, 3 lakh rupees was his profit which he himself made without disclosing to the company. So in that case, the board shall have the right to take away the profit, that is the 3 lakh rupees excess which have been paid to him. Or in that case, if he has made a secret profit in any transaction of the company, it can recover whatever was the profit he made, and he can be liable to pay damages. So the company can even tell him to pay damages whatever were done because of him to the company. Next we have liability under the Companies Act. Promoter is liable to the original allottee of shares if such untrue or misstatements are made in the prospectus we have discussed earlier. Punishment for such misstatements is ranging from 6 months to 10 years imprisonment. Means what? What is the liability under the Companies Act? If in case the original allottee some untrue or misstatements are made in the prospectus, so in that case promoter shall be liable and he shall be punishable from imprisonment ranging from 6 months to 10 years, which is given under section 34, 447 and 448. We shall be studying about them in detail further. In the process of winding up of the company, if official liquidator makes an application, then the court may make a promoter liable for misfence or breach of trust. More than the one promoters are involved in such activities, then they are jointly and severally liable even after his death. His estate may be held liable if he had made such estate by abusing his fiduciary position. So what means what? That if there are more than 1 or 2 promoters, suppose 2 to 3 promoters have done these activities, so in that case they shall be personally and severally jointly liable, that is all 3 of them shall be liable to pay the losses. And even if in case any of them is dead or anything happens to the person, in that case his personal property shall be sold and the property, whatever the profits or whatever the losses company has occurred due to that, shall be recovered from the promoter. So from this we can see that even promoter shall be liable even if he is the part or even if he is doing the work of formation of the company, still he shall be liable for any misstatement or for doing any wrong work in the company. So the Companies Act shows that they are very strict regarding all the people who are functioning with the company, right from the promoters to the employees. Next we have remuneration of promoters. Now, what will be the promoter's payment or what shall be their salary? Because we know that still the promoters are in that stage when company is not into existence. So, they shall expect that they shall also have some profit. So, what is the remuneration and how it shall be paid or what shall be done for their remuneration? We'll see all the provisions regarding to that. Remuneration of promoters. A promoter has no right to recover any remuneration from the company for his services promoting the company unless there is valid contract to that effect. Hence, in absence of such contract, he cannot even recover his preliminary expenses or the registration fees. However, in practice, it is not difficult to recover such preliminary expenses. The articles generally contain a provision authorizing the directors to pay such amount to the promoters. Therefore, in practice, a promoter is remunerated in any of the following ways. So, how he shall be? He shall not be given any salary or he shall not have any right for remuneration for the services while he is providing the work of promoting. That is when it is in the stage of formation. after it starts making valid contract, and after there is a bank proper name which is allotted, and there is a bank balance which is available, after that he shall be allowed, or he shall be given something as salary or remuneration. So what shall be the basic remuneration for the promoter? So they may be paid lump sum by the company. The mode of payment may be cash or shares and debentures of the company, or both. He may take commission on shares sold. In case a running business is taken over by the company, he may charge commission on the purchase price of business taken over by the company. So what shall be done for the remuneration? Firstly, he shall be paid a lump sum amount by the company, or he shall be made in payments except cash. He may be given some shares, or he shall be given some debentures, or both. It shall be on the company what they pay to the promoters. Then he may take commission if they have taken over a company, completely formed company, if they have purchased and they have taken over for themselves. In that case, he shall charge commission on the shares sold. That is, if a share is being sold for suppose 10 rupees, he will say after every share, I need at least 1 rupees as my commission for every share I am selling for the company. Then he may even take some payment as his commission over the formation of the company. Next, he may be given an option to buy shares of the company in future at par when their market price is higher. Means what? That the company shall tell him that suppose the price of the share is rupees 10 per share, and the market value of shares is suppose 20 rupees. So in that case, he can purchase the shares at par, that is at 10 rupees, and when the market price is higher, that is 20 rupees, he can sell it, or he can keep it for himself, or he can do anything with it. He may sell his property for cash or fully paid shares at an overvaluation after making full disclosure to the board of directors and intended shareholders. So he can even do by selling his own property to the company, and he shall disclose that he has given his company he has given his shares, or he has given his property to the company, and he shall inform this to the board of directors and the intended, that is the shareholders who are present in the company at that point. The board may pay all expenses incurred in getting up and registering the company. Article 62, Model Articles of Company Limited by Shares, as contained in Table F of Schedule 1 of the Companies Act 2013. So means what? That whatever is paid by him, by the promoter, shall be paid back to him when the company is being registered, because all the expenses that he is showing, he shall have the proof, that is he shall show the bills that he has used, and he shall see to it that all the expenses that are incurred are given and paid back to the promoter by the company once it comes into existence. Since the promoter is remunerated for services rendered prior to incorporation, there cannot be a contract between the promoters intended to be formed. Generally, a provision is made in the company memorandum and article for the payment of remuneration and reimbursement of preliminary expenses. What do you mean by preliminary expenses? Preliminary expenses means expenses which have been incurred prior to the formation of the company, and there shall be a proper arrangement, proper provision made in the articles and memorandum of association regarding whatever are the payments and remuneration to be paid to the promoters, or whatever has to be paid, how much shall be paid, what shall be his commission, whatever it is, company shall decide and put it in the memorandum and articles of association. It is necessary to disclose all such remuneration or benefit in the prospectus. Whatever is done shall be mentioned in the prospectus, as the shareholder should know that exact position and what is exactly happening in the company. Now we have pre-incorporation contracts. For the purpose of forming a company, the promoter may enter into some commercial or financial contracts with the third parties on behalf of the company. Even when a company is yet to be incorporated, they are termed as pre-incorporation contracts or preliminary contracts. Legally speaking, a company would not be responsible for such unauthorized contracts. So, for the purpose of forming of the company, since they want to form a company and they want to enter into transactions with the third parties before the incorporation of the company, such as for example, which can be done before the formation of the company is when they are seeing for a property, that is a place of business where they want to set up their business, or where they want to set up the main company, where their industry shall be, where the manufacturing plant shall be. There shall be preliminary contracts with the people for seeing that they do it at a reasonable price and such things. Then these are not to be said as unauthorized contracts, because before incorporation there shall be people who shall speak about the company and who shall show the idea and buy on behalf of the company. Moreover, it would not be possible for it to ensure such contracts for the simple reason that the company was not at all in the existence at the time of the formation of the contract. This legal position used to create a problem for all, that is, to the company, to the promoter, and also to the third parties. Even under the principle of agency, the company could not own these contracts even by ratifying them. Therefore, there was no option for the parties but to make new contracts with the third parties. In the earlier act, what they used to do was they did not use the contracts which were done before incorporation, and they used to create an issue and they used to say that these are unauthorized contracts. But since it used to be a time consuming act, so what they did in Companies Act 2013, they have stated that even those contracts can be considered while they are incorporating, that is after the incorporation of the company. There was no option for the parties but to make new contracts with third parties. However, the legal position was changed by a Specific Relief Act in 1963. According to the section 15(4) of this act, the pre-incorporation contracts made by the promoter can be ratified. It says that where the promoter of a public company has made a contract before its incorporation, before it is warranted by the terms of its incorporation, the company may enforce it, but such contract should be within the company's objects as mentioned in the memorandum. Section 19 of the Specific Relief Act 1963 also provides that the other parties can also enforce to the contracts against the company. What are the provisions which are specified in the Specific Relief Act 1963? The company had adopted or accepted such contract after the incorporation. B. It has communicated its acceptance to other party to the contract. And C. The contract is warranted by the terms of incorporation. That means contract is within the scope of company's objects as stated in the memorandum. So, to see whether the contract which they have enforced was an action or was correct or not, in that case what they had to do was that before incorporation was the contract accepted, has the communication of acceptance between both the parties done, and it is in written form. It should be in written form, and the contract which was done shall be warranted by terms of incorporation. That means that it shall be done within the objects of the memorandum. That is, whatever we have stated in the memorandum of association shall be, the contract shall be regarding that only. In short, if after incorporation the company does not ratify or adopt such a contract, it cannot be enforced against the company. Printing of memorandum and articles of association, renting premises, hiring secretarial staff, remunerating the professionals, etc. are a few examples of such contracts. So whatever was done shall be seen to it that the incorporation, before incorporation, whatever acts or whatever was done have been stated before the memorandum and articles of association. Now next is liability of a promoter in case of pre-incorporation contracts. A crucial question would arise when the company does not or could not ratify or adopt such contracts for a valid reason, such as the contract was not one warranted for the purposes of incorporation of a company. A question will arise even when the company does not execute a fresh contract after incorporation. So in this case, what does it happen? That there will be a crucial question that whatever was adopted before incorporation and the liability which was done, who shall be responsible for that? So in that case, in that case, company does not need to execute a fresh contract for incorporation. Following verdicts of the courts would highlight the legal position of a promoter in the such circumstances. If both the contracting parties are aware about the fact that the proposed company is not yet formed, the contract shall be void. However, if the promoter receives some goods or money on behalf of a company, he is under an obligation to return it to the other party. Suppose when the contracting parties are aware that it is not yet formed and contract shall be void, means what? That suppose if a person comes into contract with another person who is in the case when company is still not incorporated, in that case the contract can be decided as it is a void contract. This was decided in the case Phonogram Limited versus Lane 1982 cubic 1938. Promoters are liable to pay damages for failure to perform the promises made in the company's name. So, even the promoters shall be liable for the failure to perform the promises made in the company's name. Pre-incorporation contract shall deem to be made personally by the person who makes it. Means what? That pre-incorporation contract shall be made personally by the person who makes it. Means he shall be responsible and answerable to the company for whatever he has made in the contract. Now we are done with the stages of promotion and we have seen what all a promoter shall do, what it shall be his liability, features, who he shall be. He shall have a fiduciary relationship with the company. Now next we have incorporation or registration of a company. We have done with the first stage, that is of the promotion, that is the promoter stage. Now second we shall be doing about the incorporation, registration of the company. In the stage of incorporation, actual steps are required to be taken to bring the company in existence. Incorporation is the method by which artificial person or corporate body is created under the Companies Act 2013. Registration is the method of having the company incorporated. So the most important step is incorporation of the company, which is the registration. That is, the registration of the company shall be the most important method to be done for the incorporation of the company. Now we have mode of forming incorporated company. A company may be formed for any lawful purposes by any 7 or more persons in case of a public company, or any 2 or more persons in case of a private company, or 1 person company in case of 1 person company. That is to say, private company by subscribing their names to a memorandum of association and otherwise complying with the other requirements of this act in respect of registration, form an incorporated company. Means what? That we have seen this in the earlier chapter, that for the purpose of creating a public company we need minimum 7 persons. For making a company, private company, we need 2 persons. And for making a 1 person company we need 1 person, and this is the minimum subscribing requirement for the purpose of incorporation. Since this is the important step, now we shall be seeing how it shall be incorporated. However, the memorandum of such 1 person company must contain the name of other person who shall be, in event of subscriber's death or incapacity to contract, become the member in company. So in one person company, we shall state the name of the nominee who shall take over the company or who shall be responsible in case the person who has formed the company has any loss or his death or in case of his incapacity. In such a case, prior written consent of such other person in the prescribed form shall be filed with the register along with memorandum and articles. It is to be noted that such person may withdraw his consent in prescribed manner. The members of such one person company may at any time change the name of such other person by giving such notice in such manner as may be prescribed. So the person whom I wanted to be the nominee of my one person company, I can change his name whenever I want and in the manner which is prescribed by the Companies Act. The member of such one person company may at any time change the name by giving such notice in such manner as may be prescribed. Such a change in the name shall not be treated as alteration of memorandum. It has nothing to do with the company. It is to be done with the managers that I have changed the name. Hence, there need not be any alteration in the memorandum of association. This is, we are speaking about the one person company. It is obligatory on the member of such a company to intimate all such above mentioned changes to the Register of Companies. Whatever is done shall be mentioned to the register, and since we are not altering in the memorandum but mentioning it to the Register of Companies shall be one of the important aspects. The Memorandum of Association is the basic document of the company which contains the fundamental rules regarding the constitution and activities of the company. An Article of Association is the document which contains rules, regulations and bylaws regarding the internal management of the company. Both the terms are used in detail in separate topics. So, what does this mean? That Memorandum of Association is the basic document of the company. We know about this, and it contains about the fundamental rules, that is the basic rules regarding the constitution and the activities which are going on in the company. And Articles of Association is a document or rules and regulations which are given for the internal management of the company. So these both books we shall be studying, these both the Memorandum of Association and Articles of Association, both shall contain different rules and regulations regarding the internal and the external management of the company, which we shall be studying in the further topics. Now we have procedure for formation of a company, which I shall be starting from the next class.